The room was too quiet for a heart that had once danced to music. I sat by his bedside, holding his frail hand, feeling the warmth slip away little by little. His breathing was slow, each breath like it was fighting to stay, and yet I could see it in his eyes. He was ready to say goodbye. My husband, the man I had loved since the night of our first dance, looked at me with a soft smile that broke me more than tears ever could. "Promise me you'll keep dancing," he whispered, his voice barely a sound, almost like the rustle of leaves in the wind. My chest tightened, tears rolling down my wrinkled cheeks, but I forced myself to nod. I squeezed his hand, not ready, not prepared for what was about to happen. How could I say goodbye to the only man I had ever loved? The monitor beside him beeped slowly, steadily. Then suddenly it skipped. My heart jumped. His eyes shut, his grip on my hand loosened, and the world seemed to stop. "No, no, please, not yet," cried out. But then, something happened. His lips moved again, just barely. A whisper. Words I could not believe I heard at that moment. And that was when everything changed. "Now let me take you back. Back to where it all began. Back to the night of the dance that started it all." I was only 17. Full of life but shy as a mouse. The town had organized a community dance in the church hall. The lights were dim, the smell of fresh pies filled the air, and the band played music that made hearts beat faster. I wasn't planning to go, but my friend Sarah dragged me along. "Don't sit in a corner tonight," she warned me, tugging at my arm. "You never know, the right one might be waiting." I laughed nervously, brushing down my dress, which was borrowed and a little too loose on me. I didn't believe in fairy tales. My parents had taught me that love was work, not magic. But that night, I was about to learn how wrong I was. When he walked in, I noticed him instantly. Tall, with brown hair that curled slightly at the ends, and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. He didn't look at anyone else, he looked straight at me. My heart raced so fast I thought I might faint. The band started playing a soft tune, and before I knew it, he was standing right in front of me, bowing slightly like a gentleman. "May I have this dance?" he asked. My voice got stuck in my throat. I just nodded, and he took my hand. That first touch. Oh, it was like sparks flew from his skin into mine. The world disappeared, and it was just the two of us on that floor. My feet stumbled at first, but he guided me, patient and gentle. And for the first time in my life, I felt safe. That was our beginning. Our first dance. But life was not always music and spinning lights. After that night, the world threw storms at us. Storms that tested if our love was strong enough to survive. There were days of laughter, when he would surprise me with flowers or lift me in his arms and spin me around the kitchen just to make me smile. And there were days of tears, when arguments and misunderstandings made me wonder if love was enough. And yet, no matter how hard things got, we always came back to that first dance. To that moment when he made me believe in something bigger than myself. But the truth is, love stories are never without pain. The same love that fills you with joy can also break you into pieces. And I learned that the night he almost never came back to me. It was a stormy night. Years later, long after we had built a life together. He was late returning home from work. The roads were slippery, the thunder loud, and my hands shook as I paced the room. Hours passed, and fear clutched me tighter than ever before. When the knock finally came at the door, it wasn't him. It was a policeman, his hat dripping with rain, his face pale with worry. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "there's been an accident." My heart stopped. The policeman's words struck me like a bolt of lightning. My knees weakened and I gripped the doorframe to keep from falling. "There's been an accident," he repeated, his voice heavy with pity. My lips trembled. Is my husband alive?" The man hesitated, and that silence was louder than any thunder outside. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a painful reminder that the answer might shatter my world. "He's alive," the officer finally said, and I gasped in relief. But before I could breathe fully, he added, "But he's badly hurt. We need you to come with us right away." I rushed into my coat, not even bothering to lock the door. The ride to the hospital was the longest of my life. Rain hammered the car roof, the wipers squeaked across the glass, but all I heard was the sound of my own heartbeat. I prayed silently, begging God not to take him away from me. Not like this, not so soon. When we arrived, the hospital smelled of antiseptic and fear. Nurses rushed past, wheels squeaking on the floor, while machines beeped from every direction. The doctor approached me, his expression serious. He was in a car accident. His car skidded off the wet road and flipped. He's stable for now, but it's touch and go. You should prepare yourself. Prepare myself? How do you prepare to lose the love of your life? I was allowed into the room. And there he was, my strong, laughing, full of life husband. Lying so still, tubes attached, bruises across his face. My chest ached at the sight. I took his hand, whispering through tears. You promised me forever. Don't you dare leave me. His eyelids fluttered, and for a moment I thought I had imagined it. Then weakly he whispered, I'm not going anywhere. I laughed through my tears, relief flooding me like a river breaking its dam. That night, I stayed by his side, refusing to close my eyes. Every beep of the machines, every breath he took, felt like a gift. And yet, that was only one of the storms we faced. After weeks in the hospital, he recovered. But the accident changed him. He was more careful, more thoughtful, as though he had stared death in the face and learned how short life truly is. He brought me flowers more often. He hugged me longer. He held my hand like he might never get the chance again. It was during this season that we grew closer than ever. We laughed at small things, cooked meals together, and sometimes we even danced in the living room with no music at all, just humming the tune from our very first dance. Life seemed perfect again. But I soon discovered that marriage was not only about love and laughter. It was also about sacrifice. A year after the accident, he got a job offer far away in another city. It was a chance for a better life, more money, more security. But it also meant leaving behind my family, my friends, and the only home I had ever known. Come with me, he said, his eyes pleading. We'll build something beautiful together. I looked at him, torn between fear and love. Leaving everything behind felt like tearing out a piece of myself. But looking at him, I knew the truth. Home was not a place. Home was where he was. So I packed my bags, kissed my parents goodbye, and followed him into a new life. The new city was exciting but also lonely. I cried some nights, missing the comfort of my old home. He noticed, of course. One evening, he came home with 2 tickets. What's this? I asked, wiping my eyes. He grinned. A dance. Just you and me. To remind you of where we began. That night, under fairy lights strung across a small hall, we danced again, just like the first time. And once more the world disappeared, leaving only us. But life, as always, had another storm waiting. Happiness never lasted without its shadow. One winter evening, months later, the phone rang. I answered, expecting to hear from my sister. Instead, a cold, unfamiliar voice spoke. Is this Mrs. Walker? Yes, this is she. There was a pause, then the words that froze my blood. Your husband has been arrested. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. My husband? Arrested? The word rang in my ears like a bell that wouldn't stop. What do you mean arrested? I stammered, my voice shaking. Please come to the station, the voice replied firmly. We'll explain everything when you arrive. I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded as I threw on my coat and hurried into the cold night. My legs felt heavy, my mind spinning with 100 questions. What could he have possibly done? The man I knew, the man who once twirled me around the kitchen floor, the man who held me through storms. He couldn't be guilty of anything. He just couldn't. When I arrived at the police station, the air felt colder than outside. The walls were gray, the lights harsh, and the sound of typewriters clicking filled the silence. And there he was, sitting behind bars, his head bowed, his hands clenched together. James! I cried, rushing to him. He lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine. They were full of pain but also something else, fear. I didn't do it, he whispered quickly, gripping the bars as if they were the only thing holding him up. You have to believe me. I didn't do what they're saying. My chest tightened. What are they saying? Before he could answer, a stern-looking officer pulled me aside. Ma'am, your husband was found near a warehouse break-in. Stolen goods were discovered at the scene, and he was the only one there. He claims he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but until further investigation, he's under arrest. I felt like the ground disappeared under my feet. A warehouse break-in? My James? No. He worked hard every day, came home tired but proud of what he did. He wasn't a thief. I turned back to him, tears welling in my eyes. Tell me the truth, James. Were you there? Yes, he admitted, his voice raw. But I wasn't stealing. I went there because one of the men at work asked me to help unload something. I didn't know it was stolen. I swear to you, Margaret, I didn't know. I searched his eyes. And what I saw there was not the face of a liar, but the man I had trusted with my whole life. I believed him. The next weeks were torture. I visited him at the station as often as they would allow, bringing food, bringing hope, bringing words I sometimes didn't even believe myself. People in the neighborhood started whispering. Some crossed the street to avoid me. Others looked at me with pity. But I held my head high. He is innocent, I told anyone who dared ask. And then came the day of the hearing. I sat on the hard bench, my hands trembling in my lap, as the judge read the charges. James stood tall, though I could see the fear in his posture. Witnesses came forward, some speaking against him, others unsure. And then, miracle of miracles, one man stepped forward and confessed that he had set James up, using him as a cover to move stolen goods. The room gasped. James was declared innocent, and just like that he was free. When he walked out of that courtroom, I threw my arms around him, sobbing into his chest. I knew you didn't do it, I whispered. He held me tight, his voice trembling. I thought I'd lost everything. But you never stopped believing in me. That's what saved me. That night we didn't celebrate with a party. We celebrated with something better, peace. We held each other on the couch. No words needed. Just the comfort of knowing that even in the darkest storm we had survived. But as life has a way of reminding us, joy never comes without its shadows. Weeks later, when things were finally settling down, I discovered something that shattered me in a different way. While cleaning out his work jacket, I found a folded letter tucked deep in the pocket. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the words. It wasn't from a man. It wasn't from work. It was from a woman. The paper shook in my hand as I read the words over and over, hoping I was wrong. I miss you every day. I wish things were different. One day, maybe we can be together again. Yours, Evelyn. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. Evelyn? Who was Evelyn? And why was she writing to my husband like this? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The walls of our little living room seemed to close in on me. After everything we had been through, the accident, the arrest, the whispers from neighbors, this was the wound I had never expected. I stuffed the letter back into the pocket and sat frozen on the couch, my mind spinning. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone slipped it into his jacket at work. But deep down, the ugly seed of doubt had already been planted. When James came home that evening, his smile lit up the room like it always did. He kissed me on the forehead, set down his lunchbox and said, "Smells good in here. What's for dinner?" I stared at him, the words caught in my throat. Finally, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Who is Evelyn?" I asked. His smile faltered. He froze. The silence stretched between us like a knife. Where did you hear that name?" he asked carefully. I held up the letter with shaking hands. "From this." His face went pale, and he sank into the chair, running a hand through his hair. For a long time he didn't speak. My heart pounded louder with each second of silence. Finally he said quietly, "She was someone from before you. Before us. Before us." My voice cracked. "Then why is she writing to you now? Why do you still have her letters?" He rubbed his forehead, his eyes filled with regret. "I didn't answer her. I swear. I never wanted you to find that because it means nothing now. She was someone I cared about once, before I met you. But when I met you, Margaret, everything changed. You are my life. That's the truth." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But my heart ached with betrayal, even if it was from a love that came before me. "You should have told me," I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. "You should have told me she existed." "I didn't want to hurt you," he said softly. "I thought if I buried the past, it would stay buried." That night I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering if love was ever as simple as I thought. The next morning I almost packed my bags. Almost. But then I remembered the courtroom, the accident, the nights of dancing with no music. And I realized something. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other, even when the world tried to pull you apart. Still, the shadow of Evelyn lingered in my mind, and though I stayed, a small piece of me was afraid. Afraid that one day, she might step out of the shadows and into our lives. And that fear came true. One evening months later, I opened the front door to find a woman standing there. She was beautiful, with auburn hair and a confident smile that made me feel small. "Hello," she said, her voice smooth. "I'm Evelyn. I think you know my name." My fingers tightened around the doorknob, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Evelyn. The name that had haunted me for months was now standing on my doorstep, real and breathing. She smiled politely, but her eyes carried a sharpness that made my stomach twist. "May I come in?" she asked as though she had every right to. For a moment, I didn't move. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut, to keep her outside where she belonged. But another part of me, curious, terrified, desperate for answers, stepped aside and let her in. James was in the kitchen, humming softly as he stirred a pot on the stove. When he turned and saw her, the spoon fell from his hand, splashing soup across the counter. His face drained of color. "Evelyn," he breathed, the name heavy with history. I crossed my arms, my voice shaking. "So it's true. She's real." Evelyn's gaze flicked between us. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said, though the confidence in her voice told me otherwise. "I just thought after all these years, James, you deserve to know." "Know what?" I snapped before she could finish. She looked at me with almost pity. "That I never stopped loving him." The word sliced through me like a knife. I gasped, my hand flying to my chest. James stepped forward quickly, shaking his head. "No," he said firmly. "Evelyn, you can't come here and say things like that. I have a wife. I have a life. Whatever we had is over." But Evelyn didn't flinch. She smiled sadly. "Over? James, do you really believe that? You used to talk about forever with me too." I felt sick. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand she leave immediately. But instead I stood frozen, watching the past and the present collide in my living room. Finally, James walked over to me, placing his hands gently on my shoulders. "Margaret, listen to me. She means nothing to me now. You are my world. She should not have come here. Please believe me." I stared into his eyes, searching for the truth. I saw desperation, love, and fear, all tangled together. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But Evelyn's words echoed in my mind like poison. After a tense silence, I whispered, "You need to leave. Now." Evelyn held my gaze for a long moment, then finally nodded. "I see. But remember, Margaret, the past doesn't disappear just because you want it to." With that, she walked out the door, leaving a storm behind her. That night, James held me tightly as I cried. "I should have told you about her long ago," he admitted. "But I swear to you she is my past. You are my present and my future." His words comforted me, but not completely. A seed of doubt had been planted, and seeds, no matter how small, can grow into thorns if left alone. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal. James worked, I cooked, we laughed, we even danced again in the living room to chase away the shadows Evelyn had left. But I couldn't shake the unease. Then one evening as James left for work, I noticed something strange. A slip of paper tucked under the windshield wiper of his car. I hurried outside, pulled it off and unfolded it with trembling hands. It was another letter. This time, the message was short but sharp as a dagger. "If I can't have him, no one will." My hand shook as I read the words again. "If I can't have him, no one will." The paper crumpled in my grip, my heart racing with fear. This wasn't just about the past anymore. This was a threat. When James came home that night, I pressed the note into his hand. His eyes scanned it, his jaw tightening. "She's gone too far," he muttered, pacing the room. "What does she want, James?" I whispered. "Why won't she leave us alone?" He stopped and looked at me, his eyes full of guilt. "Because I never told her goodbye properly." I walked away, but I didn't close the door. "And now she thinks there's still a chance." His words cut deep, but there was no time to argue. Evelyn's obsession was dangerous, and I knew it. The next few days, I lived in constant dread. Every knock at the door made my chest tighten. Every ring of the phone made me jump. I stopped sleeping properly, listening for sounds in the night. James tried to reassure me, but I could see the worry in his eyes too. Then one evening, as James was locking up the shop where he worked, I went to meet him so we could walk home together. The streets were dimly lit, shadows stretching long across the pavement. That's when I saw her. Evelyn. She was standing across the street, her auburn hair catching the glow of a street lamp, her eyes fixed on James with a look that chilled me to the bone. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. James turned, followed my gaze, and his whole body stiffened. Evelyn, he said firmly, his voice echoing in the still night. This ends now. But before he could take a step, she reached into her coat pocket, and my heart stopped. Something metallic glinted in her hand. The street was silent except for the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. James stood frozen, his eyes locked on Evelyn, who now held the small metallic object in her hand. For a terrifying moment, I thought it was a gun. But then the light caught it, and I realized it was only a key. She smirked, twirling it between her fingers. Did you think I'd hurt you, James? No, not yet. But this is the key to something you've forgotten. James frowned, confusion etched across his face. What are you talking about? Evelyn stepped closer, her voice sharp. The storage unit by the old train tracks. Remember? You left something there years ago. Something that belongs to us. My stomach twisted. Us. She was trying to pull him back into her web of memories, dragging the past into our present like a ghost that refused to stay buried. There is no us, James said firmly, though his voice shook slightly. Whatever I left there doesn't matter. My life is here now with Margaret. Hearing him say my name should have calmed me, but instead fear gnawed at me. What was hidden in that storage unit? Why hadn't he told me about it? Evelyn laughed softly, a sound that made my skin crawl. You can pretend all you want, but sooner or later Margaret will see the truth. And when she does, she'll know you were never really hers. I couldn't take it anymore. Enough! I shouted, my voice trembling with both rage and fear. Stay away from us. If you come near James again, I'll go to the police. For the first time, Evelyn's smile faded. Her eyes darkened and she leaned in close, her voice low and threatening. You think the police will protect you? You don't know what he's hiding. You don't know him like I do. With that, she slipped the key back into her pocket and walked away into the shadows, leaving a storm of fear behind her. I turned to James, my hands shaking. What is she talking about? What's in that storage unit? His face was pale, his lips pressed tightly together. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally he whispered, There's something I never told you. The silence between us was heavier than any storm I had ever known. James's words hung in the air, suffocating me. Something I never told you. My hands trembled as I gripped his arm. James, I whispered. What is in that storage unit? He lowered his gaze, his voice barely above a whisper. Before I met you, I wasn't the man you know now. I was lost. I did things I'm not proud of. Evelyn was part of that life. My stomach tightened. What things? He swallowed hard. We used that storage unit as a hiding place. Money, letters, things that didn't belong to us. I walked away from it all when I met you, Margaret. I left it behind and swore never to look back. But Evelyn, she hasn't let go. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. The man I thought I knew, the man who held me through every storm, was now admitting to a past full of shadows. Why didn't you tell me? My voice cracked. Because I didn't want you to see me as that man, he said, tears brimming in his eyes. I wanted you to only know the James who danced with you, who built a life with you, not the one who made mistakes. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand more answers, but fear gripped me too tightly. If Evelyn still had the key, if she still had power over his past, what else could she destroy? Suddenly, a noise outside shattered the tense silence. A loud bang, like metal against metal, echoed from the street. James and I froze. I rushed to the window, my heart pounding. There, under the street lamp, was our mailbox. Its door swinging open, bent as if it had been forced. Papers scattered across the ground, dancing in the wind. James darted outside, and I followed, my nightgown brushing against my ankles. Among the torn envelopes and letters, one piece of paper stood out, folded neatly, placed deliberately. James picked it up with trembling hands. I leaned over his shoulder, and together we read the words scrawled in sharp, angry handwriting. Meet me at the storage unit. Midnight. Or Margaret learns everything. The clock ticked louder than usual that night, each second dragging me closer to midnight. James paced the living room, his jaw tight, his eyes clouded with worry. I should go alone, he said finally, stuffing the note into his pocket. No, I blurted, my voice sharper than I expected. If she's dangerous, I'm not letting you face her by yourself. He shook his head. Margaret, it could be a trap. I don't care, I snapped. Whatever happens, we face it together. Didn't you promise me forever? His eyes softened for a moment, and he pulled me into his arms. Forever, he whispered. At 11:30, we left the house. The streets were quiet, the moon our only witness. When we reached the old train tracks, the air grew colder, and the sight of the rusted storage units sent a chill down my spine. They stood in rows like silent guards, doors locked and covered in rust. James found the one with the number Evelyn had written in the note. His hands shook as he slid the key Evelyn once held into the lock. With a metallic click, the door creaked open, revealing darkness inside. The smell hit us first, dust, mildew, and something faintly metallic. James stepped inside, pulling me with him. The beam of his flashlight cut through the shadows, revealing boxes stacked against the walls. One box had already been opened. Papers spilled across the floor. Among them were bundles of cash, old photographs, and letters tied with a red ribbon. James's face paled. She kept everything, he whispered. And then footsteps. The sound echoed through the unit, slow and deliberate. I spun toward the entrance, my heart racing. Evelyn stood there, framed by the moonlight, her eyes glinting like fire. I knew you'd come, she said, her voice dripping with triumph. You can't hide the past forever, James. And now Margaret gets to see who you really are. Before I could respond, she reached into her coat again. This time, what she pulled out made my blood run cold. It was not a key. It was a gun. The cold steel glinted in the moonlight, and time seemed to freeze. Evelyn's hand was steady, her finger curled tightly around the trigger. My breath caught, my heart hammering in my chest like a drumbeat of doom. Evelyn, don't, James said, stepping forward slowly, his voice calm but firm. Put the gun down. This isn't you. Her lips twisted into a bitter smile. Isn't me? James, this has always been me. You walked away from us, from everything we built. And for what? For her. Her eyes snapped toward me, filled with venom. I tried to stay strong, but my knees shook. If you ever loved him, Evelyn, I whispered, then don't do this. Don't let hate destroy what's left of you. Her face hardened. Don't you dare talk to me about love. I loved him before you even knew his name. You promised me forever. But then you came along, and suddenly forever was gone. James raised his hands, his voice breaking. Evelyn, I was young. I was lost. But with Margaret, I found my true self. I found real love. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you, but you have to let me go. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Hesitation, sorrow, longing. But then it vanished, replaced by raw fury. She tightened her grip on the gun. If I can't have you, James, she hissed, then no one will. And she pulled the trigger. The sound shattered the night like thunder. I screamed, throwing myself toward James. He stumbled back, his body hitting the boxes behind him. For a moment, I thought it was over. My heart stopped. But when I looked down, I realized the bullet hadn't hit him. It had lodged into the metal wall, inches away. James lunged, grabbing Evelyn's wrist. The gun clattered to the ground, and the two of them struggled in the dim light. Evelyn fought like a wild storm, her fury giving her strength, but James held on with everything he had. I rushed forward, kicking the gun across the floor, out of her reach. My hands shook as I grabbed her arm. Stop this. Evelyn, please. But she was beyond reason. Tears streamed down her face, her voice breaking into sobs. It was supposed to be me, James. It was supposed to be me. Finally, with one desperate push, James pinned her against the wall. She collapsed, sobbing, her strength gone. The fight drained out of her, leaving only the broken woman beneath. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have heard the gunshot. Within minutes, officers swarmed the place, pulling Evelyn away. Her cries echoed in my ears long after she was gone. When it was over, James and I stood in the middle of that storage unit, surrounded by ghosts of his past. He turned to me, his face pale, his eyes full of shame. "I'm so sorry, Margaret," he whispered. "You deserved a man with no secrets, no shadows. But all I gave you was a broken past that came back to haunt us." I touched his cheek, tears running down my face. "No, James. You gave me love. You gave me a life worth living. And that's more than I ever dreamed of." We walked home in silence that night, our hands clasped tightly, as if afraid to ever let go again. For years after, life returned to something almost normal. We grew older together. We laughed, we argued, we danced in the kitchen. Sometimes when the past tried to creep back, James would hold me close and whisper, "You're my forever." But time is a thief, and no one can fight it forever. Decades later, I found myself once again by his side, this time not in a storage unit, not in a courtroom, not in the chaos of life, but in the stillness of a hospital room. His hair was gray, his body frail, but his eyes, oh, his eyes still looked at me the way they did on the night of our first dance. "Do you remember?" he whispered weakly. "That song they played when I first asked you to dance?" I smiled through tears. How could I ever forget? He squeezed my hand gently. "Promise me, Margaret, promise me you'll keep dancing. Even when I'm gone." My heart shattered as I nodded, unable to speak. His eyes closed, his breathing slowed, and the world seemed to pause. That was the moment I said goodbye to the only man I ever loved. From our first dance to our last goodbye, ours was a love story written in storms and sunshine, laughter and tears. And if I had to live it all over again, I would choose him every single time. Because true love isn't about the absence of pain. It's about holding on, through every storm, through every shadow, through every goodbye. And though his body left me that night, his love has never gone. It still dances with me even now. It has been many years since James took his last breath in that quiet hospital room. And yet, I can still feel his hand in mine, warm and steady, as if he never left. Sometimes, late at night, I close my eyes and imagine the sound of our favorite song drifting softly through the house. Then, in my mind, we are dancing again, just as we did on the night we first met. Grief is not something you outgrow. It changes you, molds you, but it never truly leaves. At first, the silence of the house was unbearable. Every chair seemed empty, every corner too quiet. I found myself setting an extra plate at the table out of habit, or calling his name without thinking. But over time, I realized James hadn't really left me. His love lived on. In the way our children laughed, in the way our grandchildren looked at me with his same twinkle in their eyes, in the strength I carried that he once gave me. I learned something powerful. Love doesn't end when life does. True love has no expiration date. It is written in the little moments. The way he tucked my hair behind my ear, the way we laughed at nothing, the way he held my hand when words weren't enough. These memories became my lifeline. There were days I broke down, days I wondered how to keep going without him. But then I remembered the promise I made in that hospital room. James asked me to keep dancing, even when he was gone. And so I did. I danced at our granddaughter's wedding, smiling through tears. I danced alone in the kitchen while making Sunday dinner, the same way we used to. I danced with my great-grandson, his tiny feet standing on mine, just like James once did when teaching our son how to move to music. Every step, every sway, reminded me that James's love wasn't gone. It was simply transformed. From our first dance to our last goodbye, our story was never about perfection. It was about endurance, about holding on when the storms raged, about forgiving when mistakes surfaced, and about loving fiercely despite the shadows. Now, as I sit here telling you our story, I hope you take one thing with you. Love is not measured by how long it lasts, but by how deeply it is lived. Hold on to the people who bring you joy. Forgive more than you think you can. And when you find someone worth dancing with, Never stop holding them close. Because when the music finally ends, and it won't be the goodbyes you remember. It will be the dances, the laughter, the love that carried you through. And that, dear one, is the story of James and me. From our first dance to our last goodbye, and every heartbeat in between.